Hey everybody, welcome to Saturday. This is a day when I should not be working, I should not be doing anything in here, but sometimes a news story breaks that you just have to cover because let's just say that when we filmed 10 yesterday, Transport Evolved News, I actually said when I was filming it, California has gone to stage 2. We'll explain what that means in a second, but that means that Elon Musk has decided that Fremont's facility can open up and Tesla can start making electric cars again. And I think my exact words when filming that was, you know, we're filming this on a Friday, things may have changed by the time we hit publish. And in fact, they did this afternoon. And I don't want to just discuss this on my own and just be like a single person chatting to the camera. So I brought in my good friend, Shawn Mitchell, from his YouTube channel. It's the Shawn Mitchell YouTube channel, isn't it, Shawn?
Hello, hello. Thanks for having me on. It's titled Shawn Mitchell, but I changed the name, or at least the branding of it is All Things EV, where I talk about all things electric vehicles and everything tied to it.
I remember. You've got to forgive me, it's a Saturday afternoon. I was working late into the day yesterday doing a whole load of other things. So, Shawn, what have you been up to today? What were you doing when you heard this news story come through?
I'm glad that I checked Twitter because I was busy working. I was with a client house shopping, looking at different homes, and I think that I was on my way to go get my haircut. I just finished. On my way to go get my haircut, I had to stop at the grocery store to get like a thank you card for my barber for taking me in to get me a fresh cut. And I saw some other people, some journalists talking about how they were about to enjoy a Saturday off, and now they're having to write a story about something. So I thought, okay, let's go check to see what Elon has said. And lo and behold, it's Elon being Elon.
Elon being Elon, and I think that, you know, we need to be fair with Elon on this one, so much as I kind of preempted it yesterday. So Elon, let's start at the beginning. COVID-19 hits, everybody goes into shelter in place, right? That's the best start for this. And some areas had initially more cases than other. And of course, the San Francisco Bay Area had quite a large number of cases initially, and the San Francisco Bay Area has a very, very, very densely populated, it's very densely populated, has a large number of people in a small space, and that means that California as a state decided to lock down, and then the county of Alameda, where Tesla's Fremont facility is, also implemented a shelter-in-place order. Now, Tesla has been fighting against this since day one, because when it first went into focus, Alameda said everybody needs to stay home except essential businesses, and Elon basically went, Tesla is an essential business, we're still going to carry on making cars. Alameda went, no, you're not. And then that's the way it's been for the couple of weeks, right?
Yeah, that's. I think they may even be into 4 or 5 weeks of you know, mostly shut down.
Right. And one of the benefits of this is that obviously it slows the spread of coronavirus. It slows, one would hope, the infection rate. And if you look at the infection rates for parts of the country where people have gone into shelter in place fairly early on, the infection rates are much steadier and they're not quite as severe as they are in parts of the US. It was the
Free America?
Yeah, basically free America, and you know, the world is in a, you know, it's fascism. He was comparing this to fascism, which seems a bit extreme if you ask me. But
yeah, I was vocal about my opinion about that. I think that there was probably a more effective way for him to communicate that. And probably working back channels to get everything up and running and as safely as possible is probably a better approach to that. It just, you know, that along with him saying he's going to sell all of his assets and you know, own as little as possible, it just, you know, creating unnecessary attention around the wrong things with what he's doing. And so I'm very much supportive of him communicating what he wants and what he thinks is the best thing, but sometimes the delivery of it lacks a lot.
Yeah, and I think we are at a position now where Elon is someone, from a psychological point of view, Elon is somebody who had a really tough childhood, right? He had a really tough time. He had a lot of people saying no to him, a lot of people bullying him, a lot of people making his life difficult. So he focused on science and technology and is this genius, right? Elon is a genius. He's a very clever guy. He is very, very driven. He is very single-minded when he wants to be. He really focuses down on a project. It's the reason why Tesla is where it is today. Let's not kind of hide that fact. But at the same time, that single-mindedness can sometimes get in the way of making decisions that I think would be maybe more beneficial for the company. And I think in this case, Elon's rants, was it 10 days ago? A week to 10 days ago, he started ranting about comparing the California stay-at-home orders to fascism, talking about free America, this is unconstitutional, and that ties straight in with the people, the armed people who are going to protest in places like Michigan, saying we need to open up America now. He's essentially aligning himself with that sentiment because he's saying, hey, we want to reopen the country. And so he's been pushing. And then on Friday last week, on Thursday last week, he sent an email round to everybody at Tesla going, Governor Newsom has just gone from stage 1 to stage 2 in a 4-stage reopening plan. That stage 2, we'll talk about what that means in a second, but essentially Governor Newsom said we've gone to stage 2, and Elon read that to mean that gave Tesla permission to reopen. And even as he sent that letter around saying we're going to reopen, we're going to have 1/3 of the staff, which is a smart move, right? So 1/3 of the normal capacity in terms of staff, gives more people space, increases the physical distance between staff, allows people to operate in a safer environment. But at the same point, he didn't actually get he doesn't appear to have gotten complete approval to do this. And yesterday, Alameda County came along and said, nah, sorry, you're not allowed to reopen the facility. And that's where the metaphorical excrement hit the blades that are spinning really fast. Where do you stand on this, Shawn?
I'll say this initially. I'm glad I'm not the person having to make the decision on whether to send your employees back to work or whether to keep them at home. This is not an easy decision at all. Mm-hmm. When I look at this from a health perspective, a health and safety perspective, certainly important to keep people at home as much as possible to prevent the spread of a pandemic. That is for certain. On the other hand, so people dying and people getting sick is not good. On the other hand, if this prolongs, if this lasts long enough where things are shuttered and not operating is really, really bad. So, as a business owner who works mostly for myself, I do have some people who are dependent on me. I understand. I understand this push and this pull between being as safe as possible, making sure that you're not contributing towards the spread of something that just is really nasty for humans, as well as making sure that you're not destroying people's lives in a whole different way. So this is not an easy decision. I'll just wrap it up with that I don't envy these big decisions being made, and I see from both.
So when I have one employee, but she happens to be an employee that I also happen to be a good friend with. I've known her for many years, and so I want to do the right thing for her. And we exist in an industry that technically it's possible for us to work away from the office. Now, I say that right now as YouTube is giving me an error saying that the stream is not necessarily particularly stable because it's the weekend and everybody's using the internet and I live in the middle of nowhere and we've got a 20 megabit per second maximum upload speed. So that might be causing some problems. Apologies if you're watching that. But as an employer, I wanted to make sure that we got everybody out of the studio, that we cancelled all of our meetings in person, and we moved to a work in remote situation. Now, as a virtual business or a business that has its storefront in the virtual world, there's nothing that we produce that you have to physically go and get. You're just watching videos. I can do that really easily. If you're making cars, that is something very, very different. So I understand where Elon's coming from on that side. And yes, in order to produce more cars, in order to ensure that Tesla can continue to produce cars and sell cars, Tesla needs to reopen its facility at an appropriate time. Is it an appropriate time right now? Personally, I am not sure. I do not live in Alameda County, but I can tell you it has the second highest infection and I believe the second highest death rate of any county in the San Francisco Bay Area. Now, you know, if you look at this map here, if you're watching the live stream, we've got the various counties around the San Francisco Bay Area. And we have Alameda County, total cases, 1,961, 70 fatalities. And the next highest one is actually the Santa Clara County, which is south of Fremont, which has a higher infection rate. But the actual infection rate, the bare numbers do appear to suggest that Alameda County is still a hotbed. Now comes the caveats. It is one of the larger counties in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I'm desperately trying here to stick down the line, let's stick with the facts rather than my gut reaction, because my gut reaction is it's too soon. But let's stick with the facts here. It is one of the larger counties, so it's likely to have a higher population. That means the number of cases are going to be higher. And I would love, maybe somebody in the chat room can do a quick search for me and find out the per capita figure for that area. I haven't got that map up. I should have got that map up. I suspect the per capita figure is slightly different. I suspect that when you look at per capita infection rates, it's very, very different. And the other thing we should note here is that Tesla is one of the biggest employers in Fremont. And so Tesla's being back at work, Tesla employees being back at work is essential to the local economy. But on the other side, personally, I have had one family member die of COVID. Not on my side of the family. Effectively, someone on my in-laws' side has passed away from COVID. And somebody else in my family, a little bit closer in, is married to somebody who work as professionally in the medical industry. Some of whom have got it. Some of whom are worried about getting it on a daily basis. And I have one very dear old friend whose mother is currently fighting it. And so it's very similar to me. Sorry, I have a dog in here who's growling in her sleep. It's very cute. So from a personal standpoint, I don't want it to happen. But from a business point of view, Shawn, I can understand why Elon wants to do it. But I think the messaging is wrong.
Yeah, and by the way, this is not the only automotive company who's pushing to reopen.
Right.
In fact, a day or two ago, I just shared out, maybe it was yesterday, I've lost track of the days lately, but Ford is opening up on the 19th. They're opening up their manufacturing facilities. So they're not the only ones who are pushing to get things moving again, at least to some extent. You know, an interesting point that that I saw made by, I think it was my buddy Vincent who runs Tasmanian Products. He said that Tesla has already done this in their Shanghai manufacturing facility. This is not their first rodeo, so they should ideally understand what is necessary in order to make sure that you walk that line of getting things up and running as best as possible, but also maintain an important level of safety. We don't know what Tesla's doing in Fremont to date to mitigate things and make sure that people are as safe as possible. Maybe they've communicated some things, because taking people's temperatures as they walk in sounds vaguely familiar.
Right.
But walking that line, as I said before, I don't envy the person who has to make that decision, because you're, on one hand, you want to protect people's livelihoods. Tens of thousands of people rely on Elon as the CEO of several companies for their living, to provide for their families and kids and all of those things. But you also have the other side of things where you don't want your employees to get sick for one reason or another. I don't see any basis for people saying that Elon just doesn't care about employees. I think it's just ludicrous, because if he's exposing these employees to something dangerous, he's losing productivity anyway. So it just doesn't make sense to peddle that message that some people think that he just doesn't care. I don't think that that's the case at all. I think that he, again, is sitting and looking at the entirety of things. And if they're not selling cars and making cars, they're not making money, which impacts employees. So it's not an easy decision at all.
No, it's not. And I would support Tesla reopening when the state deemed it safe. And I think that's where the crux of the problem comes in here. I think which was made, right? That was already announced. I believe that
Friday.
stage 3 is when most businesses were due to reopen, and this is part of the challenge, So, is car manufacturing an essential business? I think that's what this question comes down to. Elon is saying that that they are going.
I believe the state said that manufacturing is able to open. I mean, we can sort of pull this up here and see if that. I believe I saw a tweet from the governor.
Right. Specifically about Tesla factory?
About manufacturing.
Right.
Being able to start back up again.
I will have to try and find that as well, because it's very important that we make sure that this is as accurate as possible.
I'm looking now, and I'll read it verbatim when I find it.
Oh, great. Fantastic. So there's two things I want to kind of respond to what you said there, Shawn. The first one is, Tesla has done this with China before, brought China back on board and brought the Gigafactory back online. In his interview with Joe Rogan last week, he said that no one had died at Giga Shanghai, which I find believable. That is definitely a believable thing. I don't believe that Elon would necessarily have work conditions that were going to cause people to catch this. This is not like a meat processing plant, right? And I think this is another important thing that we can come back to in a second. This is not a meat processing plant. But in China, let's not kid ourselves. What happened in China? What happened in Shanghai when COVID-19 struck? The Chinese government, in areas that were affected, went, nobody is going anywhere. Not to the store, not to the park, not to see Granny. Nobody is going nowhere. And in China, it's a horrible thing to admit to, but in China, if you were disobeying those orders, there were some pretty severe consequences. It wasn't just kind of like a tap on the wrist, go home and we better not catch you out again. Much more severe consequences awaited you if you dared break those orders. So China had a better start. Tesla's Giga Shanghai had a better start because people had been forced to socially distance for a really long time. Now, forgive me, I may not have this correct, but I do not believe that the San Francisco Bay Area had that strict a stay at home. I don't believe if you went out with a drive, the police would pull you over and say, where are you going and what are you doing? I don't believe it was that strict.
Says beginning Friday, May 8th, manufacturers are allowed to start or to be open, but should close break rooms, create outdoor break areas with physically distanced seating.
Okay.
So to me, that says that California as a whole is allowing manufacturers to reopen.
And so then this becomes a matter of state versus county versus city.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're watching this and you're outside of the US, different countries do things in a different way. So in the United States, obviously you have the federal government, which sets the big laws, a lot of the big laws. And then you have state laws, which are generally what everybody affects everybody's day-to-day life. Federal laws are things like taxes and, you know, crimes for murders and interstate crimes and things like that, and safety things. But states set their own laws for a lot of things, and then counties can set their own laws, and then cities can set their own laws, just the same as you pay your federal taxes, you pay your state taxes, you pay your county taxes, and you pay your city taxes. And so what happened here is Gavin Newsom said, okay, stage 2, everybody can, manufacturing can start. Stage 3, I believe, I did have the stages up earlier. Stage 3, I believe, is you can open some non-essential stores and small gatherings are okay. And then stage 4 is kind of back to normal.
Hey, Nikki.
Yep.
I just came across a press release from Alameda County saying that they are in contact with Tesla and, quote, the team at Tesla has been responsive to our guidance and recommendations, and we look forward to coming to an agreement on an appropriate safety plan very soon, end quote. So that press release was released today, May 9th.
And also here we have a statement from Mayor Lily May, who is the mayor of Fremont, city of Fremont, obviously, which is in Alameda County. As the local shelter-in-place order continues without provisions for major manufacturing activity such as Tesla to resume, I am growing concerned about the potential implications for our regional economy. We know many essential businesses have proven they can successfully operate using strict safety and social distancing practices. I strongly believe the same practices could be possible for other manufacturing businesses, especially those that are so critical to our employment base. Remember what I said earlier on about Tesla being a really, really big employer in Fremont. The city encourages the county to engage with our local businesses to come up with acceptable guidelines for reopening our local economy. As we have done for over a decade, the city is prepared to support Tesla as soon as they are able to resume automobile manufacturing operations and are committed to a thoughtful, balanced approach to this effort that remains safe for our Fremont community. So they are talking, it looks as if Fremont are supporting Tesla. Tesla and Alameda County are talking. I suspect the governor's office are also talking to Tesla, which is great for Tesla, but the infection rates are continuing to rise and the death rates are continuing to rise across basically most parts of the United States that are not New York City. And the reason why New York City has been so successful is that New York City did have very strict shelter-in-place orders. New York City has tested more people than the rest of the United States, I believe, at this point. Huge numbers of people have been tested. And the mayor of New York City and the governor of New York have worked no question as to whether California technically met its own guidelines for reopening or the CDC's guidelines for reopening. I know the reason why Oregon is not reopened yet is because the governor does not believe that we've hit those targets yet. So we are slowly starting to reopen, but there's so much concern here. And you know, from a point of view of somebody who has been affected by COVID and somebody who is very keen not to spread this, and someone who's made the decision to work from home because of it. I'm curious to see just how many people have come out of the woodwork to support Elon in what has been a very unthought out Twitter campaign. And I've got a question for you about that, Shawn. Is it genius, or is it just was he being clever by coming out so strongly, so hard and fast against these shelter-in-place orders, being so vocal about Alameda County, and earlier on today tweeting, saying, you know, we are going to effectively, we will see you in court, and then later on saying, you know, I'm trying to find the tweet here, we will move our manufacturing. I can't find those tweets anymore, so I don't know if they've been deleted. But earlier on, Elon Musk said, we will move our entire operation out of California to Nevada.
Yeah, I'll read it. I have it. It still exists here. He says, quote, frankly, this is the final straw. Tesla will not move its HQ and future programs to Texas/Nevada immediately. If we even retain Fremont manufacturing activity at all, it will be dependent on how Tesla is treated in the future. Tesla is the last car maker left in California, end quote.
Yeah, I just found it. And he said previously before that, and I've got it up on screen, Tesla is filing a lawsuit against Alameda County immediately. This unelected and ignorant interim health officer of Alameda is acting contrary to the governor, the president, our constitutional freedoms, and just plain common sense. Elon has become a real kind of constitutionalist lately, hasn't he? Or maybe, yeah, or maybe maybe more of a libertarian.
I think he probably leans that way anyway.
Yeah.
My guess is, based on other things that he's mentioned in the past. But you know, I do have some sentiments about this. You know, this is looking through the lens of someone who's made a career out of selling, and who is in real estate currently as his profession. This is textbook negotiating. This is textbook. This is, when I read this, I said to myself, because it was in my car, I wasn't talking out loud, but I thought to myself, this is negotiating strong arming at its best. And you know, whether you like it or not, this is how things get done, right? In really, really big deals. And so there is a very good chance that he has no intentions of following through with any of this. Right. He just needs to say it out loud to create enough stir to make people think that he's serious. And in my opinion, he has a lot of Tesla has a lot of leverage, and so if you do something extreme like this, you get people's attention, and then they're listening to be able to negotiate. So, you know, it is a little it's a little crazy. It's not necessarily my style of negotiating unless it's absolutely necessary. He probably thinks that this is necessary to do.
And I hope you don't mind me bringing your day job in here, Shawn. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit like negotiating your closing contract for a house. When we bought this house, we fell in love with this house, and we were still 2 months out from being able to actually put the deposit down, because we had the deposit wasn't going to be liquidated in time. And so we made this contingent offer, and they really pushed us to kind of push through. What if we do this? What if we do this? What if we do this? And there was one point where somebody else came along and tried to offer them more, and we had a bargaining chip. We had to play hardball. And this is exactly what Elon's doing. He's doing this hardball, like, this is Twitter. I can say what I want. We'll come to that in a second, because I'm sure the SEC will have something to say about this. I'm going to say one of things are not actually getting, the filters are working, let's just say that. There are lots of people here. I am seeing racism. I am seeing anti-California sentiment. I'm seeing some really nasty right-wing stuff. I'm seeing some really nasty left-wing stuff. People are polarized by this, and that
Yes.
is keeping this discussion in the headlines. I mean, you and I are talking about it right now. So this is a genius move from Elon's part, but I think also it could be a negative one. I haven't checked the kind of the after hours price of Tesla futures right now. Have you? I'm gonna bring up a thing and look.
But I can check. Yeah, I can check.
Remind me, are you a shareholder, Shawn?
I was, and then I had to divest for personal reasons last year, but I'm back in as of the last couple of weeks.
All right, so the can't see the after hours here. It closed at 8.19.
0.03%, 0.03% up.
Okay.
After hours.
So that's interesting. So I mean, obviously last week, when Elon said, "I'm selling everything. I'm selling all my property, and Tesla is overpriced."
Yes.
And the theory now seems to be that people are now theorizing that he was self-sabotaging in order to avoid the payouts. I don't know how I feel about that. But
I mean, I thought that he had gone overboard at that point. When I read that stream, I just thought, this guy needs a sabbatical. He needs to get away. And, you know, there was even some conversation privately between some friends and I about trying to help in the background with that. And clearly it had the inverse impact on the stock price. It didn't drive the stock price down like I thought it would. It's gone up since he made those tweets.
Yeah. Well, I think Elon is definitely the new Steve Jobs in that regard. You know, he's got that reality distortion field. All right, so I'm just talking to people right now. Dennis reminded us it's a Saturday, so no trading, of course. We'll see how things are on Monday. But also people are complaining in the chat room saying we're being biased towards Tesla, which is nice because normally people accuse me of being anti-Tesla. We've also got people talking about COVID-19 and saying it's a lie, it's fake, it's Chinese, it's whatever. And I just have something to say to those people because I feel I'm going to actually pull you off the screen here, Shawn, for a second, because this is I don't want to drag you into this, but folks saying that this is nonsense and this is fake. Let me just give you some facts here. Fact number one: there is not a there's not a vaccination for this, which is why it's different to the common cold. And you can say, yes, but this and that and the other. There are no vaccinations for this. Someone is peddling some stupid myth claiming that people who have been vaccinated are somehow, against the common cold, are somehow more susceptible to COVID, which I have not been able to find any data to back up. I'm sorry, that, as far as I'm concerned, is not proven in any kind of secure, concrete way, and the skeptic in me is going, no. If you look in parts of the country where closing down things and closing the country down or closing the county down has actually helped to lower infection rates. It's basic science. If you don't interact with other people as much, then you lower the rate of infection. That's basic epidemiological kind of foundation. And as soon as you open things up, if you haven't got a hold on testing, you haven't got an idea of who is infected and who isn't, who is a carrier and who isn't, who is immune and who isn't, then you're just playing Russian roulette with a very nasty, very deadly condition, or something that has the potential to be very nasty and very deadly, and it has killed people that I care about. And I am not the only person who is in that situation. So personally, I think Elon is opening too soon. From a business perspective, I can understand that he wants to. I think he blackmailed Alameda County quite effectively earlier on and has got them talking to him. I think he's able to do that because he's Elon Musk. And I also think that there's a large number of people who watch, who follow, who look at what Elon's doing and follow him. Literally say, well, if Elon says it, it must be right. And I think as I'm going to bring you back on now. I've had my little rant, Shawn. I think as reasoned, sensible, intelligent, they do fool. Because I think it's too soon to open. I think the infections have not caught on yet. the president said earlier on today, basically, we're just going to now rely on herd immunity, which I think is a categorical disaster. I think it's going to play badly for President Trump in November at the elections. I think the United States things are going to get a lot worse before they get better. And you just have to decide whether you're somebody who's happy to go out and interact with people without personal protection, without kind of following appropriate guidelines, or if you're somebody who's going to try and do everything you possibly can to keep those you love fed, sheltered, and safe. And that is where the problem comes in here. Because in some countries, we would have a social safety net that would allow Tesla and other companies to go, you know what? You're still being fed. You're still doing okay. I know that you are not in dire straits right now by not working. So therefore, let's wait off a week or two. We've got a factory in China already producing cars. Let them take up some of the slack, and then we'll go from there. The question I do have, though, and I think, you know, things like UBI and all of those things, they're going to be discussed after this is all over, because I think people are going to look at free healthcare and UBI in a very different way when this is all over, because this crisis has highlighted categorically how easy it is for our fantastic modern society to be brought to its knees. And we should also remember that this is the first global crisis, the first truly global crisis that we have had, I believe, in the internet age. You know, had this happened 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, we wouldn't be all sitting here talking online about it. We wouldn't be discussing things like we are, and we would have a very different experience. Some people would say it would be less authentic, but at the same time, the signal to noise ratio right now is, there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of noise, there's a lot of misinformation, and it's hard for people who are nervous and worried and scared to pick out the sensible, smart, scientifically sound route, or the smart business option through there. And I'm just going to turn to some of the chats now. I see people. Yeah,
let me jump in here and add some thoughts while you're looking through those.
Yeah.
This reminds me a lot of real estate investings, minus the mortality piece of it, but there's risk when you're making a real estate decision. You have high risk and you have low risk. And this is probably like making any major decision. It's not going to be void of risk ever. In when you have a situation like this where you have a pandemic, and you have some cases where things are flatlining, and where things are decreasing in some states. I personally think that Colorado and the governor have done an outstanding job at walking that line of keeping people as safe as possible, but allowing the most important things to continue to operate. So how do you allow things to allow some normalcy, but making sure that you're minimizing the risk? I'll give you an example. So we are expected and ordered by the state and counties to wear masks when we're walking into people's houses and showing them homes. I mean, this, to me, this is probably a pretty risky thing, right? You don't know whose house this is. You don't know if they're sick or not. Hopefully the listing agent is helping communicate that and not allowing showings to begin with. But if you're asymptomatic, how do you know? And so, you know, masks, gloves, and hand sanitizer, those have been my three best friends lately. And I think that's probably implementing some precautions there. Is it going to eliminate the risk completely? No. Am I exposing myself maybe a little bit more than someone who's staying at home? Yes, but you have to weigh everything out and assess. I know that I'm a very healthy person, and so my risk for catching this is probably lower. It appears like younger people are less susceptible than older, and people who have health conditions, existing health conditions. So assess the risk. And I think that's probably how we have to navigate this moving forward, because the risk is not going to go away completely.
No, it's like the Michael Moore film video, that thing we did, and obviously some of the other stuff we did. That we did a thing on Tesla V Nikola with a lawyer. I actually got a lawyer on to explain the details of the case, and people still went, "Nah, Tesla's going to win." So I think America is too hung up on the Constitution. Yes, the Constitution is the basis of all law by which the country is governed in the United States. But unless you are a constitutional scholar, I do believe there are way too many kind of common back garden constitutional experts who don't really understand what the Constitution means, but because they learnt it at school now think that they know everything there is to know about it. And I would say leave it for the constitutional scholars to help us understand what is and what is not constitutional. But I do not believe an action that is taken with the best interests at the time in a crisis to try and preserve life and the pursuit of happiness is unconstitutional. Yes, your liberty was taken away temporarily, but we are not China, and we are not living in countries around the world where people are given far less freedoms. And these freedoms were put in place to try and help deal with it. Unfortunately, the response was a little delayed. Unfortunately, the response was muddled by the Commander-in-Chief and some of his statements on that. And I don't really want to get too political on here about that. But I believe, that I don't believe anybody here has acted maliciously in an attempt to take anybody's freedom away. And I know that there are huge numbers of conspiracy theories flying around right now, trying to claim that it's some kind of government plot to control people, to take away people's liberties so that they can do X, Y, and Z. In the UK, people are spouting about it being a way to put 5G radio towers in so that everybody can be controlled, their minds can be controlled. Look, it's a virus. Viruses happen. And when a virus happens, when a bad thing happens, you try and stay away from the bad thing. And sometimes governments have to work with a large picture, with experts, to try and minimize the risk and the danger. And people were talking about Sweden in the chat room saying, oh, well, Sweden didn't shut down. No, Sweden didn't shut down, and now it's paying the consequence. Sweden's death rate is absolutely skyrocketing right now because people have come down with the virus as a consequence of it running rampant and unchecked through the population. The only difference between what happened in a country like Sweden and what's happening somewhere like the United States is the slope of the curve is different because of social, physical distancing orders. That is where I sit, and I think that's where people sit. Where goes this from now, Shawn? So Elon has said, oh, we're going to move. I don't think he's sort of kind of given any more detail on that. And I've been talking to a couple of friends of mine who are Tesla investors, a couple of friends of mine who have personal connection to Elon Musk and were worried about him in the last couple of weeks. Also asking the obvious question, as shareholders, where was Elon's minder for this? There was an agreement with the SEC that if Elon Musk was going to continue to use his personal Twitter account to make announcements about Tesla, that he would have someone check his Twitter account. Does he have a minder anymore? Has he slipped the leash? Does he just not give a monkey? Is he just being that... I mean, because this is going to cause backlash either from investors going, you can't just make random, maybe I'll do this statements without having that backed up, without having that signed off by the board, because you're the guy in charge.
I mean, the good news is that they're not in trading hours, so he can probably get away with a little bit more. That's certainly not my expertise, but I'm going to guess to say that a lot of what he shared recently in terms of material information for the company has not been reviewed by anyone. When I first read the tweets last week, I think it was, where Elon was talking about freeing American fascism and selling his personal belongings, as I mentioned earlier in this live stream, I thought that he had gone quite mad, and I was really concerned. And I mentioned earlier as well that I was a part of some brief conversations behind the scenes about how maybe we can open up some how spontaneous he is and how flexible he is, and that that's sort of flowed down to his company. But in these types of things, I would love for him to be a little bit more restrained, a little bit more tactful, a little bit more well thought through in terms of what that, I think a lot of what he says is probably just very much how he feels in the moment, but doesn't realize how that could impact other things. To bring it back to what he said today about leaving California, I don't think he has any intentions really of leaving California. I think that he and Tesla probably have some important announcements coming soon about Texas, and he's leveraging that to force California in Alameda County to open things back up with some restrictions. In many ways, he can come across as flippant, but I think what he shared today is extremely strategic and is very likely going to accomplish his end goal, which is to get the plant back up and running again.
Right. I've heard from people who say Elon really does care. People who know him say he really does care and he does want to do the right thing. I think he's got caught up in his own caricature. He's got caught up and bought into the image of the genius has to solve everything. And it feels like Elon's biggest challenge is delegating. It feels that's one of his biggest challenges. And I get that, because there are times working at my company, there are times in my family life, I have a tendency to just get things. I pick up ideas and concepts really quickly. And very often I will understand something and will be frustrated about the concept of having to teach that to someone else or pass that on. So I'll just take it on and do it myself. And I just get that inkling that that's how Elon works. He has that idea of, this is how I want to do this. This is going to be the best. I've considered all the options. I don't need you to tell me what's a good idea or what's not, because I've made my mind up. Now, does that mean that Elon's always right? Absolutely not. I've seen him make some really, frankly, what I believe to be stupid decisions that are driven by fear, whether that's fear of the share price dropping, whether that's fear of Tesla not meeting its goals. I think Tesla should never have become a publicly traded company. I think Tesla would be in a very different place if it had not become publicly traded. But at the same point, public trading saved Tesla. So, it's a very fine line to drive. I think he's driven by fear of failure and fear of the stock market going bananas if he does the wrong thing. And so he's got to a point now, he's almost throwing it at the wall to see what sticks. And this angry, I'm going to leave California, as Dennis in the chat points out, Tesla's HQ is actually in Palo Alto. It's not in Alameda County at all. So is Tesla going to move from Palo Alto? Is it really going to move from Silicon Valley and go to the middle of Nevada? There's not a whole lot out there. Not a whole lot out there, really, honestly. And that's not being nasty to people.
Austin, I think, would be a fantastic HQ too. You've got a lot going for it in many ways. I was born and raised in Austin, so I think I can claim to know a little bit about the city.
And I love Austin. I think you're right. I think Austin would fit Tesla really well. I suspect that Tesla would shake things up a little bit in Austin and cause some problems and have a beneficial impact on the city and on the entirety of that little portion of Texas. I think that would make a real difference. It's so interesting to see the chat here. People are saying that Elon's not driven by fear of the stock price. The other day he said it was too high, causing it to drop. But I think he worries about the company's future and making those goals. I think we need to be at a point though where we say, look, this is not over. Tesla, obviously, either the factory will reopen pending agreements with Alameda County, or it won't. Elon is going to keep pushing because that's how Elon is. And we are along for the ride. Tesla financially had a really... I think that Elon needs to stop being so free with his mouth and so willing to cause a ruckus. It's the whole you win more, you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. And lately he just seems to be giving everybody vinegar. And his fans will lap it up because it's a cult of Elon. And there are people in this chat room. If Elon said right now, we're going to Mars tomorrow, who wants in? There are people who would go, yeah, I'm going. If Elon said, you know, brown bread is terrible and we should never eat it again, there are people who say that, you know, then they would follow suit. Someone's asking me, why are you favouring economic slavery for American workers? No, I'm not favouring economic slavery. I've said earlier on, I would much rather that we had universal basic income. I would much rather we had a healthcare system that covers everybody. I believe there's a way of making that work. But I also believe that the coronavirus bills that were set forth by the US government ended up being very cronyistic. I tried to apply several times and there was no funds left. And I actually applied for a local grant from my local county and was told, when I told them about my employee and their salary and what they did, they said, well, you should just fire them and they should get unemployment. And I said, no, my commitment to my employee means that I want to continue giving them work. I want to continue to see them working. So I believe that we are in this situation not because Elon got in a disagreement, but we are in this situation because of a failure of our federal government, a failure of leadership at the top level. And that's a completely different discussion that's got nothing to do with Tesla. Elon is picking up the pieces from that. And he is stumbling like the rest of us are, because none of us have had to deal with this before. None of us have had to deal with a pandemic on this scale. None of us have had to deal with the thought that we might not have a job at the end of the week. I am incredibly lucky. I have a job. My wife has a job. She works for a company that is doing okay right now. And so she's still getting a paycheck. I'm still getting a paycheck. I am the only person I know who's able to kind of continue at home as if things were relatively normal. Yes, I'm not paying myself as much, and yes, my income has dropped. But, you know, I'm lucky. Elon can't do that because Tesla obviously needs to make cars, needs to make profit in order to keep the employees happy. So without support from a government, I think he's stuck between a rock and a hard place. So we'll see. I'm going to hang around in the chat room here for a bit, but Shawn, thanks for joining us. Remind everybody about your channel, because you need more subscribers.
Yeah,
it's
I would
Shawn
love
Mitchell
more.
on YouTube, isn't it? Are you going to change the name, your YouTube channel name?
Probably not. I mean, people know my name, and whether I'm doing real estate or whether I'm talking about electric vehicles, and so I sort of feel like the name is the brand, and then, you know, the subcategory or the subtopic is
EV.
All things EV. I think you can probably search for both and find me, but if you search for Shawn Mitchell, it will most definitely come up. And yeah, that is what it is. I enjoy it. It's still a side hustle of mine. My full-time job is real estate, which really pays the bills and is the thing that you know, long term I think has the best potential for me. But what's happened, or what is happening, is these two worlds are converging, because where do most people charge their car? They charge it at home.
Right.
Where do you generate solar? You generate it on your roof in the home that you own, hopefully, and so it's these two worlds that I really have a lot of fun doing our converging, and it's getting more and more difficult each month to distinguish the difference between the two that I spend a lot of time in.
Well, we were going to do a get together soon and talk about homes and things you can do to your home to increase the value of it from an energy saving and electric vehicle standpoint. But I've got to give you kudos because you spoke to Sandy Munro this week. An excellent video. You were talking quite in depth with Sandy about the Model Y. You've been
yeah, you know, yeah, I do as good as I can with it, and you know, I know when I go to the grocery store, the liquor store. Of course, when I'm doing my real estate, those are times where I do have it on. Occasionally, I do forget it, and you know, I feel like that guy, you know, that dick. But I try my best to remember it.
Yep, good, well done. Well, I've got a mask. My mask is in the washing machine because I went out shopping this morning, and when I come back, I just put the mask back on. I take the mask off and put it in the washing machine. So thanks to Jerry for donating their $2. Thank you very much. That will go into the kitty to help Transport Evolved. Do make sure you go and give Shawn some subscribers because he needs more subscribers. Let's get that up to 50,000. All things EV. And Shawn, I've got to give it to you. I have no idea how you produce such high quality videos in your spare time, basically, because you know, this is my day job. I do this professionally as a day job, and I make 7 videos a week. Sometimes I think we did 10 videos this week, so whatever. But I don't know how you do it. I really don't. So thank you very much, Shawn. I'm going to let Shawn go now, and I'm just going to finish off here with everybody else. If you want to ask some questions of me, please let me know now. I'll spend a few minutes answering some questions on the main channel, and then I'm going to sign off and say goodbye to everybody. Question from Shawn from Kate Wolf. Oh, I missed it. Sorry. Asked, how are we doing? Asked how the business is doing. I think Shawn's doing well, as he just said. He's doing pretty well. Sign up as a patron, yes, to the channel. You can also support Shawn over on his channel. But you can go to sorry, no, you can't. You can go to patreon.com/Transport Evolved. I nearly let the cat out of the bag. The website's coming back, but it's not ready to come back full time yet. So thank you very, very much. Do you ever wish that you were back in the UK? I miss the UK. I miss some of the things of the UK. I miss fish and chips. I miss some of the food, but I do quite a lot of cooking, so I get some of that. I also miss the country lanes and miss being able to just get in the car and go see my mum. I really like living in Oregon. I think Oregon is a really beautiful place. I'm very lucky to live here, and I can tell you that this house we've got here, we would never be able to afford that in the UK. It would be like a several $1 million home in the UK, and we would, or £1 million home, and it's certainly not that over here. So I'm very lucky that we've got this house over here, and we moved over here partly to give our kids a chance to live in the US as well as the UK. Both our kids are doing okay at the moment, our eldest is off to university in the fall, so that's doing really well. And yeah, so I'm very glad, I'm very happy that that is going ahead. Need more live shows like the old TE, says Dennis. Well, this is kind of a proto attempt and check. So let me know if you enjoyed this. We would probably have to up our streaming capabilities a little bit more. We're currently paying $350 a month for our internet. I'm kind of waiting for Elon to come along with the Wi-Fi from the skies, which I know it's not the case, but I'm hoping that we will get a better internet as soon as that's available. Yeah, weed is in fact legal in Oregon, as is CBD, which I've got here in a bit of kombucha. I am in the United States. I live in just outside of Portland in Oregon. So there, where we go. People keep asking me how high my IQ is, and just Kate Wolf asked in the chat. I have no idea how big my IQ is, and frankly, I don't care. I think that IQ is a bit, I don't know, it's one of those things that really doesn't affect your day-to-day life and what you do. But I would love you guys to come and watch the plug-in racing tomorrow. We'll be doing that over at pluginracing.com. I will be driving badly, probably. I've got my steering wheel here. I'm going to be doing some practicing a bit later on. I have to go and do some gardening now, get out, get some sunshine and things like that. Thank you very much for being part of this chat at such short notice. Thank you again to Shawn for discussing what was going on there with Elon and Tesla. As I said, personally, I think that Elon's making a poor choice, but, you know, I'm not Elon, and so I'm not a Tesla owner, I'm not a Tesla shareholder, and that's you know, that. $350 per month for speed and allowance, says Ray Johnson. We're paying $350 a month for 20 megabits per second down, 20 megabits per second up. That's because we live in the countryside. We are 10 miles from the nearest town, or just under 10 miles from the nearest town. And so we have to have internet beamed through the air. We rely on a Wi-Fi network, a local provider who is very sweet, but they are very expensive. And when our internet went down a couple of weeks ago, and I called them on my phone, I just picked my phone up and I rang the number, and it went to voicemail, and I thought, I'm not going to leave a message, I'll call them back later. They reached out to me 10 minutes later and said, "Hi Nikki, thanks for calling. We are aware that your tower is down. We're going to reboot something and we'll get back to you." And they got me back online within 5 minutes. So generally they are pretty good. So plug-in racing tomorrow is at noon. Arno says, get fiber. If someone is willing to help fund fiber for me, I think the cost of getting fibre to this house would probably be $500,000. So, you know, if you're willing, I'm willing. We wanted to live in the country, and of course we bought the house. We had a studio in downtown Portland, and then we moved to Hillsborough. We had a studio in Hillsborough. We are getting rid of the studio because of COVID. We still have the studio technically, but we've turned off all of the services. We've turned off the electricity. I think the electricity's still on, actually. We've turned off the internet. We've cancelled all of our other things that we had going there, because it wasn't safe to go down to the studio. The county that we live in had the highest infection rate in Oregon for many, many months, and now it's been taken over by actual Multnomah County, which is obviously where Portland is, but we just needed that. So public fibre optic infrastructure for all. Yes. Yes. So there we go. Noon Pacific, 8 p.m. BST. I think it's actually 12:30 p.m. Dennis, 8 p.m. 8:30 p.m. PST. So there we go. Yes, Alexander Sims is wonderful. I do like Alexander Sims. I meant to call him the other day. I've been meaning to catch up with him. I haven't talked to him for a while. He and I have known each other since he was a test driver before he joined Formula E, so I've known him for a while, and we've had many a good chat about electric cars. He's been a Tesla driver for many years. He used to have a Tesla Roadster. I don't know if he still does, but yeah, Alex is lovely. Alex is lovely, and good to see him in Formula E. It was like the perfect race series for him, so I'm so proud of him to get into that. So there we go. Anyway, thanks to everybody for joining me. I hope that you enjoyed that. Please give us some feedback. Thank you for not being terrible to each other. There were some nasty things going on in the chat, but generally you've all behaved yourselves pretty well. When did you start using the remote studio? We started working from home 10th of March. So 10th of March, I sent Erin a message going, "You're not coming to work today, start working from home." And then like a few days later, it's like, "Come in, pick up your laptop, get out," in the nicest possible way. So she's got her work machine at home, and I've got my work laptop here in my studio in my house. This is the office, and we're actually going to convert our guest bedroom into a new green screen studio. Thank you. Happy Mother's Day wishes. Thank you, Dennis. That was very kind of you. So we are going to, we are really going to be changing a few things here. You will notice the daily videos that we do. We have been pushing those daily videos out and we've been using a green screen. So it looks like we're still in the old studio, but if you look carefully, you'll see there is a green screen artifact. We did that because we haven't built a set here, and so we've been using the old set that's still at the old studio. When we move everything out, we need to set a new studio set up here, but that room is not ready for it yet. It's the largest room in the house, so we should have enough space, but we've also got a guest bed in there, double bed, queen size bed in there, and so we need to find out what we're going to do with that and make that happen. So there we go. So I've just opened my kombucha accidentally, so I'm going to have a swig. What is your accent? My accent is British. Sorry. Now I'm going to say goodbye, guys, and thanks for joining us. We will see you soon. Have a great day. There won't be a live stream tomorrow, but you know, we'll go from there. And I think also we should probably finish by wishing everybody who is at Fremont a safe return to work if they feel able to. And I hope that Elon does the right thing. And I hope that Elon makes the environment safe. I hope that you are not pressured to go back to work. And I hope that everybody else is given appropriate measures. Because right now, God knows, we're not getting it from our leadership here in the United States. So there we go. See you soon. Keep evolving.